So you guys know that feeling you get when you're watching Netflix or you're watching a live stream or something like this, a movie, what have you, and then you say to yourself, okay, I finished the movie or the episode I'm watching, just another one, then just another one, then just another one, but not, two or three in a row. You end up binge watching 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes or films in a row, right? So you know that feeling, okay? Let's pertain that and let's relate that same feeling to the suppression of what is occurring on in the world right now. And I'm talking psychologically. And what I mean by that is this. There is a form of suppression through psychological warfare that is trying to suppress our alpha brainwave states. Okay, now before I jump into all that, you're going to see how this comes full circle, because these mental capabilities that are being suppressed just by binge watching things such as Netflix films or Twitch streams or YouTube videos, what have you, excessive binge watching suppresses the alpha brainwave state. So now, before I do that very quickly, I want to give a shout out to someone by the name of Bones. Thank you so much for supporting and watching, brother. I really do appreciate it. Hope all is well where you are. And also Astral Energy. I might have forgotten to give him a shout out a couple days ago, so I'm doing that now. And for those who I promised to shout out, just wanted to let you know, I've been swarmed the past couple days with messages and emails, so I promise I'll get to all of you guys later today. So thank you so much. Now, let's get right into it. Let's go step by step, because there's a lot to uncover here, and it goes all the way from the Nephilims and the giants to literally this form of alpha brainwave suppression being hindered from us to realize certain things that have been released through the Freedom of Information Act. So all of that's going to come together. Now, first off, what does the D.R.O.P stand for? So the D.R.O.P stands for Danger. Danger actually means flesh consuming or flesh eating. So danger reinforcement of operational paradoxes. Now, all of that's going to come full circle. So what we first have to look at is the alpha brainwave state. Now, what is the alpha brainwave state? So according to healthline.com, when your brain's alpha waves are dominating, you're likely in a state of wakeful relaxation. Relaxation techniques like mindfulness and meditation may help increase your alpha waves. This in turn may help you feel calmer, less anxious, and according to some studies, may even boost your creativity levels. Now, this is what I was saying at the very beginning, end quote. This is what I was saying at the very beginning of the episode. You know, after you watched a few Netflix episodes of something, you get up from the couch or the seat and then you say, you know what? I'm in a creative mood. That's when your alpha brainwave state is activated. But then, do you notice the difference when you go from, say, binge watching 3 or 4 episodes to 8 or 9 episodes? You get up after that and you're groggy. You're like, holy shit, you need a glass of water, you need something to eat, you know what I mean? Maybe you took a nap and everything just feels off and disoriented, no matter the time of day. That is suppression of the alpha brainwave state, which is why through subliminal marketing, and not Netflix in particular, but in general, binge watching is something that these corporations love for us to do, but it goes even deeper than that. So let's go get into it now. The next thing we need to look at and understand is what hertz the alpha brain waves function at. So they function between the 7 and 13 hertz range. That if we put the whole binge watching, Netflix thing aside, that example aside, these hertz occur more than likely in the morning, shortly after you wake up, middle of the day, just before you're about to eat lunch, when you're hungry, but you're energized and you're still, you feel good, right? Halfway through the day. And then just before you go to sleep, that sudden energy spike you get just before you go to sleep, you feel tired like an hour and a half before you're supposed to go to bed. And then all of a sudden, within half an hour of having to sleep, you suddenly feel this sudden boost of adrenaline, right? Now, yes, don't get me wrong. I'm not a scientist and there's a lot of other biological factors that come into play here, but this is the alpha brainwave state, all right? So thanks for bearing with me on that. Keep that in mind, please, as we move on. The next thing we need to look at is what the meaning of exogenesis is. So exogenesis, according to Wikipedia, in astrobiology, similar to the idea of panspermia, is the hypothesis that life originated elsewhere in the universe and was spread to Earth. And this is going to tie back to the predestination paradox. So this means, essentially, this is the theory and proposal, that life in, I guess we could say, star seeds or what have you, have different proposals and theories and conclusions as to how life came to be here. Now, that's not the purpose of this episode, so I'm going to move on. Now, the next thing is the predestination paradox, or as it is called, the causal loop. Now, this is a form of drop feeding of just basic information, not technology. But let me just read very quickly here. So Backwards time travel, my apologies. A causal loop is a theoretical proposition in which, by means of either retrocausality or time travel, a sequence of events, actions, information, objects, people, is among the causes of another event, which is in turn among the causes of the first mentioned event. And so, such causally looped events that exist in space-time, but their origin cannot be determined. All right, so a hypothetical example would be a billiard ball striking its past self. The billiard ball moves in a path towards a time machine, and the future self of the billiard ball emerges from the time machine before its past self enters it, giving its past self a glancing blow, altering the past ball's path and causing it to enter the time machine in an angle that would cause its future self to strike its past self, and so on and so forth, end quote. Now, pretty much, it is a never-ending loop that really doesn't have a start nor a finish, and this can be applied within the geometric symbolism that we see within nature, within things like the Fibonacci sequence, as I mentioned before, hermetic principles, as above, so below, and even things like the UFO technology that Bob Lazar and many others, like I talked about in Project Carrot, have spoken of, in the sense that when you break down these metallic objects, and Jack Valet mentioned this on Joe Rogan's podcast as well, when you break down these metallic objects, they seem to be reconstructed at the atomic micromolecular level that has allowed for no start or finish in this realteration of these carbon-based atoms, and meaning that it is constantly a circular loop. There was no start or there was no end, it just simply is. And I know that sounds ridiculous to us, but at a more ascended level, it becomes more understanding, which is why people who are more spiritually oriented tend to subscribe to this proposal a little bit more. But anyways, I digress, moving on. Now, the next thing I want to take a look at here is probably the most significant part of all of this, all right? And it has to do with some of the technology that has been publicly made available, and that is this. And I quote, this is from SouthChinaMorningPost.com. And I quote, Japanese scientists can read dreams in breakthrough with MRI scans. So long story short, they can pretty much reconstruct dreams that you're having while you're in the MRI machine, and then they can have you watch it afterwards. Now, why do I bring this up? Because this is a form of actually ascending the alpha brainwave state, which is why this technology has been drop-fed to us, but it will never, ever go mainstream. Okay, and so ultimately what we have to look at here is we have to sit back and say to ourselves, how can this interfere with the current technological progression of the drop feeding system? Because this is indirectly connected to the Carrot documents that allow for this type of synchronicity to occur in a cosmic sense. But that's not all. It gets even better. Let's take a look, for example, at the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, for those who have heard of Gilgamesh, it is essentially, long story short, it's essentially, for those who don't know, and this is according to GameFAQs.GameSpot.com. I know this is a gaming forum, but just bear with me. You'll see the seriousness in this. Now, quote, for those that don't know, the Epic of Gilgamesh talks about how Gilgamesh sought out Atrehasis, my apologies, the Sumerian Babylonian name for Noah, to ask him the secret of immortality, end quote. Now, this is just from a random user posted a few months ago, and he pretty much summed up what Wikipedia describes. It's just such a prolonged story that I don't want to read it for you on Wikipedia. However, this is what's interesting. The idea here is that at the time, this was the translation for Noah, right, which connects directly to the Book of Enoch, and it talks about how there really is no start or finish, but there are certain drop points around the world in which can actually resurrect people using the predestination paradox, or as called the causal loop, as I just mentioned. Now, why is this significant? So let's jump right into it. There are multiple causal loops that are placed all around the world, specifically underwater, as well as above ground, but within mountains and very isolated locations, which ironically connect to the same places where the alleged Nordics and tall whites are, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, let's jump into this. So before you say to me, Dave, okay, why should we go off of some random forum or something like this? I'll tell you why. So, Hillary Clinton's emails, and I know you might say, oh my God, here we go with the Hillary thing. Just bear with me, guys. This is when it's going to all connect. So, you remember the example I gave at the beginning of the suppression of the brainwaves and suppressing the alpha state? This is the same method used when WikiLeaks dropped the Clinton emails. What WikiLeaks didn't expect was people were going to brazen over them so randomly and so generally. WikiLeaks had assumed people were going to look into it more and read it email by email, which they should have. And I'm not saying if Hillary Clinton's a good politician or a bad one. That's not even the point here. The point here is that Hillary Clinton specifically references, and I'm putting the picture up and the document up for you guys on the screen right now, and I quote, requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim, end quote. Now, this was established through diplomatic back channels, which is pretty much like the official way of saying, yeah, we're not going to make this public, but you can still find out if you really want to, if you have the connections within the political world. Now, what's interesting about this as well is that in connection to this, and I'm putting the document up on the screen for you guys right now, it's a lot to read through, but I took the time to read it, and I found exactly what we needed to connect all of this. Mrs. Clinton, now, I'm not sure if she wrote the email herself. It didn't seem like it, but she was personally requesting that there was a back channel diplomatic cable to have the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Chamber of Gilgamesh, and other ancient mummified bodies dropped off in Indian Springs and in the mountains of Argentina. What's in the Indian Springs? What's in the mountains of Argentina? Alleged, not confirmed, I will admit that, alleged tall white area of operations that I've mentioned many times in the past few weeks that Google Earth has put up accidentally and things like this, right? An electrical shop in the middle of the mountains, and then things that literally look like the Millennium Falcon ships, spaceships, that have literally been seen there, and I'm putting the screenshots up right now, that have been seen hidden within some of these bases within Indian Springs. Now, the mountains of Argentina is a lot more difficult to actually get pictures of and things like this, which is one of the reasons why I would imagine these Nordics are inhabiting these mountains there. But the whole point here is that when we look at the fact that lots of ancient mummified bodies, and I'll provide you the list of names right now, for example, are disappearing. King Tut's body has quietly been relocated. I say that with air quotes. Vladimir Lenin, Rosalia Lombardo, the Ramses II. Why are these bodies quietly being dispersed and removed from museums? Not because of COVID, as they say, because these bodies are resting, believe it or not, in an ascended spiritual state. Whether you subscribe to spirituality or not, their mind is in an alpha brainwave state that allows for these drop holes or things like this to continue the stabilization of this dimension, because this harnesses the predestination paradox or the causal loop, as we mentioned earlier. Now, you might say, Dave, what do they do? Literally drop the bodies inside something? Here's the thing. I'm not sure yet. There are documents to suggest. I don't want to say for certain because I don't want to mislead you guys, but there are documents I'm currently going through right now that suggest that these these locations of these drops or D.R.O.Ps are generally speaking portals or stargates, if you will, that are curated for that specific purpose. So it's not like the CIA or any other military soldier can go through these stargates in order to transport or teleport themselves. The idea here is that these dead bodies are offering an alpha brainwave state that stabilize the predestination paradox concept within the universe that creates a stable balance. Now, this also connects back to the stargates in Iraq as well from many, many years ago, and that's sort of what led the whole operation to these different countries trying to keep a stabilized time frame, because regardless of which world leader you are, Vladimir Putin, the Prime Minister of Israel, even Kim Jong-un from North Korea, how do you stay in power? You need time to go on. It's as simple as that. So they're all in agreement here that they understand these things must occur. Now, Hillary also mentions that her superiors are requesting this. So the question then becomes, does this connect to the Antarctic base where alleged Nephilims and fallen angels that are still remaining have been reverse engineered? This is another question. Does this also connect to the fact that she had multiple secret meetings, not back channel diplomatic cable meetings, multiple secret meetings with the Pope? But the argument could be made, Dave, not just Hillary Clinton, but many, many other people have meetings as well with the Pope. And I agree with that entirely. So I don't want to use that as the veracity of the main basis and point here. But ultimately, we see these mummy bodies missing. We understand that there's been drop feeding technology that utilizes alpha brainwave states that allow us to ultimately ascend, but also remain descended in a certain state. For example, the way in which mainstream media technology is pushing itself onto us at a more emotional level so that we do not communicate and think in the 7 to 13 hertz 7 to 13 hertz range, right? Now, when we look at all this and we take a step back, we have to understand that this is massive. The connections here that are being made are something of that are very scarce. And this is something, particularly within the Nephilim and the Giants book of Enoch, that is mentioned over and over, the Epic of Gilgamesh. But the problem is, and this is what works great for the elite, so to speak, the problem is that the suppression of the Epic of Gilgamesh has been so distorted with so many fictional stories it's hard to find out the real authentic ones, and that's the main issue here, right? So ultimately, we don't know who Hillary's superior is that she is saying wants to have these bodies transported and things like this. This could just be part of another basic operation, but the fact that these bodies are being dropped off in Indian Springs, Nevada, where the Tall Whites area of operations are, on Google Earth, that whole slip up there, and on top of that, the Argentinian mountains, should tell us something. I don't want to say it's bad or good what's going on there. Like, from a totally unbiased standpoint, all we know is that these bodies are being sent there, these mummified bodies, these drop chambers, things like this. Could the chambers or these stargates be moved? We don't know. This could also explain why a lot of different sites and museums have used COVID as an excuse to remove a lot of archaeological bodies that have not been privy and given access to the public media. So, I'd like you guys to let me know what you think. Again, this is a lot of what's occurring here in real time. All right, this is real-time, legitimate stuff, and I want you guys to let me know what you think, because this is exactly the way in which subtle operations occur. They leave the hints because they got no other choice, but nobody pays attention. They rely on the fact that we're binge watchers. We're people that just, if we're going to look through Hillary Clinton's emails through the Freedom of Information Act, we're just going to kind of look for the stuff that, that Trump was talking about. Our mind is going to look for those keywords, right? So anyways, let me know what you guys think, because this is extremely massive. This may connect to many more things, may connect to the biologist who tried to expose the Nephilim program as well, but we will see what happens, and this definitely will be connecting to a lot of other things as well. So thank you so very much, guys, and we will catch you tomorrow. Cheers.